Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Engage Your Customer with Data-Driven Authentic Marketing. Quite a broad, holistic topic today, but very relevant and timely for marketers everywhere. We all know it's important for our strategies to be data-led, but how can you use data to drive a more meaningful engagement with your customers? Thank you for joining us. I am Aaron Jackson. I'm the Conference Director for the Insight Group's upcoming Brand Marketing and Digital Summit. I'll keep this introduction really short as we have some great speakers today and only 45 minutes for the panel. So the All-Star panel today features Muriel Lotto, Global Head of Marketing and Brand at Western Union, a worldwide financial services and communications company that was founded over 150 years ago, but through innovation and reinvention is still globally recognized today. Next, we have just a slightly younger brand. Joining us is Monaghan, Director of Brand Strategy for Visible. Visible are reimagining what a phone carrier should be. They run on the Verizon network, but have their very own distinct brand ethos and are on a mission to innovate the space. In their own words, they're the future of phone service. Last but definitely not least, we have our moderator today and friend of the Insight Group, Edgar. He's joining us from the Craftsman's agency. A few quick pieces of housekeeping before we get started. There are over 1,000 people registered for today's webinar from all over the world. This includes marketers from Starbucks, IBM, BNY Mellon, Reuters, Amazon, Fox, IKEA, iHeartMedia, and many more. And we really do appreciate you listening live and want to incorporate as many of your questions as possible. So please do use the chat function in the webinar software to send us your questions, anecdotes, feedback, and comments using the webinar chat function. And you can also follow along on Twitter. Let us know what you think. You can use the hashtag #InsightSummit, and you can also find some of our handles in the top right-hand corner of the screen currently. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Edgar. Jack, thanks for joining us today.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Aaron. And thank you for the introduction. So looking at the big title we have in front of us, Engage Your Customer with Data-Driven Authentic Marketing. We are kicking off with authentic marketing, perhaps the buzziest of all the buzzwords right now. So much so I feel like customer centricity is now the forgotten stepchild of marketing buzzwords, hiding in the shadow of authenticity. But really, like customer centricity and like many buzzwords, they are often grounded in very real shifts and trends within the industry. That is, we as marketers, those of course speaking on the webcast today, but also those listening in online at home, we have to pay attention to them. So looking at this, if you are indeed able to craft messaging and experiences that engage with your audience in an authentic way, you can differentiate yourself. You can rise above the bombardment that your audiences are undoubtedly facing. But what actually is authentic marketing? How can you better leverage your data to ensure you are generating authentic messaging? That's what we're going to be looking at over the course of today's webcast. And to kick off, I'm going to come to you, Muriel. Number one, I hope that I pronounce your name right, praying, in fact. Number two, I'd love to get your thoughts on what authentic marketing means to you and indeed means to Western Union.
Thank you, Jack, and welcome everybody to this webinar. So, and yes, you did pronounce my name right, so there is no issue there. So I think we at Western Union, so I've been in marketing for about 30 years. And what really attracted me initially to Western Union is the fact that it is a very genuine, authentic brand. And the way we translate this is really around our content strategy. We are very, very close to our customers. We are in 224 countries and territories, and therefore it's a big challenge, but at the same time, a fantastic opportunity to unite all of our customers under some big themes that are very, very key to them and very true to our brand. So let me give you some examples. We know, for example, that a lot of celebrations throughout the year, whether it's Chinese New Year, whether it's Mother's Day, whether it's Ramadan, or whether it's what I call the holiday period, so all the way from Thanksgiving to Christmas, are peak moments where our customers send money back to their families at home. And very often that family is used for gifting, that family is used for providing food on the table for a celebratory meal, and for the traditions that surround those critical moments. So we know these are very important moments in the calendar of our customers. Not only are they moments of celebration, but there are moments where people actually send money back home. So we always produce content around those key moments where we as a brand have a credible voice, because we see those celebrations happening all around the world, regardless of whether our customers are at home or whether they are in another country where they've gone to work, for example. We see those celebrations happening, and we have an online community where we are able on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis, communicate directly with our customers and ask them, what does Diwali represent for you? What are you planning to do this Diwali? And we use a combination of our social channels and our online community to really gather those nuggets of insights and information. And then we are able to track this and link it all the way to our transaction moments.
Fantastic. So ultimately, the authenticity of Western Union is not only grounded in the heritage of the brand, of course, that has an impact, but more than anything, grounded in the stories of your customers and the way in which you are able to not necessarily recommunicate, but ultimately share those stories on a broader level.
Absolutely. We actually, very much focus on not so much the somewhat commoditized transactional relationship that we have with our customers. The act of sending money from point A to point B is in and of itself a very, very functional, but the magic element that happens and where the engagement with our brand really comes onto its own is, why do people send money to their loved ones, to their families, or even in some instances to grow a business or to buy a property abroad? So the underlying reason and motivation for moving money from A to B is really what we focus on from a brand storytelling, and our customers and consumers play back to us that this feels very authentic and that Western Union is actually a part of their brand. In actual fact, it's not unusual for us to receive messages through our Facebook page, our global Facebook page, where consumers say to us, or one of our customers will say to us, "Thank you, Western Union. Thanks to you, my family was able to eat today." And this is the kind of content that we partner with key influencers to really spread around. And if you look on our Facebook pages and on our Twitter pages or Instagram pages, you will see our influencers are very much our customers. They look like our customers, and they're the ones that are able to help us tell those fantastic stories.
And interestingly, you have already touched upon a really important point there that we will delve into a little bit later, Muriel, in terms of that one-to-one interaction that you have with your community, but also how you get to generate this authentic engagement through the influencers that you choose to work with. Before we do get to that, Megan, I want to kind of throw that over to you. Obviously, Muriel has communicated how, again, their authenticity is communicated by their broad customer base, and indeed the heritage of the brand. Coming from a relatively new brand, how do you approach authentic marketing?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. Like you said, Visible is a new brand. We only launched a little over a year ago. And really, when I joined the team, we were building the brand from the ground up. So to me and to us, what authentic marketing, it really is at the core of understanding who you are as a brand and how are you going to show up to your consumers. And so much of that for us has been built upon, understanding the consumer needs. So as we were building Visible, really having a deep look at what is the problem we're trying to solve, who is this for, and how are we going to benefit the end user. All of that then helped us to build what we like to think as an authentic brand. And that's fully infused in how we've built the brand, what our brand voice is, and how we show up in the market. You really have to understand yourself um, as a brand in the marketplace in order to come across as authentic to your consumer base.
Can I just jump in a minute? I just wanted to bounce back on something that Megan said. Megan, sorry. I think that having a almost kind of brand new opportunity to create a brand from scratch is something very, very exciting. And even though our brand is 167 years old, I think what I'm really hearing is that it doesn't matter how old your brand is. Am I still here?
I believe so. I think you just cut out briefly there, Muriel. So if you could just go. It looks like someone.
Sorry, it looked like someone had muted me. So let me kind of pick up where I was, which is that whether you have a brand that's 167 years old or 1 year old, the grounding in understanding the role that we play in consumers' lives is really what defines the authenticity of your brand. And I think that, Megan and I are coming from the same school of thoughts here, which is really understanding your consumer needs, understanding the problems that you solve in their lives, and understanding what you stand for or against is really what allows your brand to behave and talk in a very authentic way.
Absolutely, and that's a really good point, and a really a great quote actually coming out of an Insight webinar actually that happened a couple of months ago. On that, one of the speakers mentioned that your audiences can sniff out a lack of authenticity faster than you can say BS. Her words, not mine, but a really kind of great quote to live by. So when it comes to that, ultimately, Megan, you are saying that to ensure that you are marketing on a very authentic basis, the first key is knowing yourself, knowing your own brand, but also really understanding your customers as well. What, I suppose, tools, what tech are you leveraging to really generate a very granular understanding of your customers, all the way from when you were just a fledgling brand to a really rapidly growing brand now? I think you might be on mute, Megan, just in case you need to. There we go. I think.
Yeah, there. I'm back now. Yeah, so I think, like you said, it's so much of it is about doing the due diligence of making sure you are doing the research and having the right tools. As we've been launching the brand, we've been still using the same consumer insights, but we've definitely, even within the last few years, from as we were developing what Visible would be to bringing it to market, we've had to keep up with that and keep up with our consumer research. So, we are fielding our own studies to better understand our audience. And so we use outside research partners for that. We also like to use, any third-party research just to better understand who our target is. And then additionally, as we've gotten creative into market, whether it be digital creative or some of our out-of-home activations or experiential activations, we've partnered with different agencies to make sure we're fielding the right studies there, so we can get on-the-ground learnings if it is an experiential activation, and then leveraging our creative and media teams to better understand how our digital creative is performing in market. So we're doing, I would say, the majority of it. We do have a lot that we're running in-house with our direct agencies, but we do look to outside sources as well.
Absolutely. And you actually kind of alluded to the importance there of striking a really effective balance between qualitative data and indeed quantitative data. How do you go about structuring that data? You mentioned if you have an experiential activation, you ensure that people on the ground, whether it's your agency partners or indeed your team members themselves, feeding back. How do you go about making sure that those insights are, working together and don't just get filed away somewhere, never to see the light again?
Yeah, so speaking to our experiential activations, because we have had quite a few, I think just as young of a brand we are, we've had quite a few touch points that have been in real life activations. And those are really challenging to actually gather insights out of, because typically you're working off of just how many people are coming through the door, how many leads are you generating. So you don't necessarily get a ton of great data out of that. And but we leverage what we can from the qualitative side. So we've partnered with some agencies to conduct on the ground studies with attendees and a control group to better understand how these activations are working. And because we've had a few, we like to then, as we are building the next activation, take those learnings, even if they are qualitative, take those learnings and help inform the next way that we're showing up in real life for an experience. So we're definitely using that to learn. And I think what has been the best learning for us on that front is developing how we can customize it to where the location we're showing up and to our audience. So really, as we're developing these activations, it kind of all comes down to how we're briefing the agencies and being very crystal clear on that front.
And you tee up a kind of question perfectly, in the sense of that, there's one thing generating a sea of data and then using that to leverage using those insights to generate broader strategy. But how, and I'm going to come over to you Muriel, on this actually, how are you ensuring that those valuable nuggets of information are getting fed all the way to the top in terms of strategic decision making, but also your campaign strategy, even down to your individual creative briefs, are grounded in these insights that might be kind of so hot off the press?
So we have a wide variety of data sources, both on the more qualitative and even more anecdotal. So, for example, our CEO, he obviously travels extensively, and every time he goes to a market, he will go to one of our agent locations, for example, or he will try and meet some of our customers and have a one-to-one conversation. It's much more anecdotal, but from the very top, we have our own CEO who's personally taking the time to go and engage with our customers. And those insights get brought back. So I may get a note from him saying, hey, Muriel, I was talking to one of our customers the other day who said XYZ. What do you think? And that immediately creates an opportunity for dialogue internally from the very highest level. We then have some much more formal research and data gathering exercises that we do, whether it be through our online community. I mentioned, imagine this is much more like a closed Facebook group where we have people, some of them are our own customers, some of them are our competitors' customers, and we have a daily engagement strategy with them where we can ask them very, very open questions around, what are you going to be doing this Ramadan, all the way to, here are two different sets of creatives. What do you think? Does one speak to you more than the other? We obviously use a lot of our social channels. We have a very, very high level of engagement through our social channels, way above what you would expect the financial services category to be. It's typically a low interest category, financial services. But in the case of Western Union, we have a level of engagement around likes, shares and comments, which is about 10 times the average of the category. And we are very proud of that. And we really leverage this, and we go out of our way to ensure that we answer every single message that our customers send us through our channels, even if it is just to say thank you. And we take a lot of pride in ensuring that we have this open dialogue with our customers, because it's what really grounds us in customer understanding and in making sure that we can then represent the voice of the customers in a very genuine but also very granular way, when we then have more strategic conversations around what should we do with our next advertising campaign, or how should we flex our media mix in one market versus another. So we are constantly uploading ourselves, and on a monthly basis we actually have a customer forum with the leadership of our organization, where we pull out metrics around our brand tracking. We have a continuous brand tracker, and on a monthly basis we share data around how our brand is performing from an awareness point of view, from a consideration point of view, and from a purchase intent point of view. And we also look at our competitors. So we will then do a deep dive analysis. For example, we will be looking at a switching analysis. Why are customers switching from us to the competition, or from the competition to us? And usually that's a great source of insight in understanding where we are doing well, but also where we are not doing so well, and therefore where we need to be optimizing, whether it's our offering, whether it's our pricing, or whether it's our messaging. So we're constantly using a variety of technique, because our fundamental belief is there isn't a single truth that's then set in stone for months to come. We need to literally have, my expression for this is, we are trying to constantly have our fingers on the pulse of what our customers are thinking and feeling, and what they are doing in this category, in our category.
And as you rightly outlined, and as did Megan, is that I suppose there's not just a singular pulse. It's the combination of anecdotal evidence with your social data. Of course, NPS is going to play a part in that as well. So it's all about ensuring there's a way that these insights work together to kind of improve future strategy. You alluded to some very, very high levels of engagement on your social channels there, Muriel. Averaging around 10% across those channels, which is fantastic. I'm just interested, I'm sure the audience would like to know as well, in terms of the weight of value that you put on each interaction. So, for example, do you see that a comment is of the same value as a click through? I ask this I know that on our side, a lot of our clients, particularly on the B2B side, put far more weight in terms of driving users to .com, so really pushing that click-through rate. So are you similar in that vein? Do you actually see there's equal weight in terms of that engagement when commenting, when liking, etc.?
So we tend to think of the engagement in our social channel in terms of the funnel, right? The typical marketing funnel. You have the top of the funnel, which is more about connecting with your consumers on shared values, shared passions. So for us, for example, if we put content around maybe passion points around food, very often our consumers who live in another country can be very attached to the food from home. So we know that when we post content which is around food from home, we get a high level of engagement, and that's really at the top of the funnel. And then at the middle of the funnel, we have content that's more towards download. Before we even get to download, but we've launched a new app. And here are some of the functionalities. And then the bottom of the funnel is download the app now. And we keep track of KPIs at all three levels. So whilst, of course, in terms of a commercial value, we really want to be able to track how much business we are generating from click-throughs into our website, for example, or from app downloads. Of course, that is a primary KPI for us, but we know that very often before a consumer get to that point, they need a level of engagement with us as a brand, as I said, very often around content and passion points and key moments of their lives. They need information about our products and services. And then and only then do we see not only an individual transaction taking place, but actually for us, what's really important is repeats, is people coming back to us over and over and over again. And not only that, but then sharing the content with their friends and family. Word of mouth is still the #1 channel for recommendation. So making sure that we can engage them enough that it's not just at the pure transactional level, but that there is a relationship that we are building with these customers, but also with their extended circles. And when we start seeing them sharing content and coming back to the brand over and over again, then we know that we have started to create a movement that will have long-lasting effects.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you touched upon that, the weight that you put in terms of different channels, whether it's social, and in terms of repeat visitors as well. Moving over to you, Megan, I'm interested to hear a little bit more about which channels you have seen the most success with when it comes to the tailored messaging that Visible is creating.
Yeah, thank you. And it's just interesting to hear Muriel as well speak about Western Union and how there are so many parallels, being being in a completely different industry. So much, like she said, so much about our business is built on word of mouth and referrals. And so I think a lot, where we're seeing a lot of success is also within our organic social content and within our community management, building those relationships that we can one-to-one in those different channels. And I think that's where, we have the most fun being able to kind of develop content in those two areas because they can be tailored and customized. And I think so much of that is it's not in a creepy way, right? Because I think, consumers are aware that there is a person on the other end of that who is either a care agent or a community manager working for Visible or for, any respective company. And so that's, I think, where we start to have genuine moments with our members where we are able to show that we're treating them differently and building that relationship, and then they're able to go and tell their network and their circle of friends about us as a new brand. So they are, putting it, rather than necessarily having to spend media dollars, it's putting it in their hands to help promote us as a brand.
Absolutely, and I suppose what a lovely kind of shift in line with this broader focus on authenticity as marketers is, in actual fact, more and more brands are relearning the value of organic social and realizing that yes, indeed there is an element of pay to play, but if you can get your organic social spot on and your customers and your users and your audience are proactively finding the humorous, the engaging, the valuable messaging that you're putting out organically, then again, not only are you saving money, but you are generating a much more authentic relationship. You touched upon the creepy factor there, Megan. I think it's almost impossible to talk about authentic marketing without the issue of being going too far and becoming creepy arising. So when does tailored messaging go too far, and in actual fact it becomes a little bit too creepy?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've been discussing internally. Just the amount of data that we have on visitors to our site and what they're clicking through, what they're interested in. And for us, a big part of our business is selling the actual devices, selling the phones. So that's something where we have been exploring what is the right direction. We can go we can go so far as to see, the exact device, the model, the size, the color that someone has put in their cart and maybe not completed that order. So we can retarget them with that device and say, We know we could go so far as to say, we know you had this in your cart, come back and finish your purchase. But that is where it felt too invasive for us. So, you know, we ourselves reined it in to say, like, that is not the right approach. That's not how we want to handle our retargeting messaging. We want to, it's not within our brand voice, quite frankly. So, you know, what we've done is, in terms of devices, just knowing that we're able then, through exploring, seeing where our customers have gone and explored through the site, we can see that, you know, are you an Android person or are you an Apple person? And that's kind of where we draw the line to say, you know, you may be, because there is a big difference between Apple users and Android users. They don't traditionally kind of go between those two device families. So that's where, you know, we're able to draw the line and still use our data to know their interest and know what they're interested in purchasing, but not going so far as to getting too invasive and creepy down to the exact device that they were looking at.
So ultimately, what you're saying, you know, the key, well, one of the keys to authentic marketing is much about what you don't do is in terms of what you do, because there are so many tools available to marketers now, you know, retargeting being such a big one. In an actual fact, if, you know, becoming a little bit too pervasive is certainly not in line with where you see your brand stance to be, then don't leverage it. Find other ways to authentically engage. And I could not agree with that more. I want to take a moment here, just because we are getting a number of questions coming through, which is fantastic, from Dolores, Tessa, Patrick. Thank you so much. Everyone else who sent through some questions. So I'm going to jump into a couple of those before we move on to our next section. And we actually have one, Muriel, directly for you from Dolores, who asks, how has law compliances affected your messaging strategy, particularly as a global brand?
It's an ongoing challenge. We have very intense and very, at times, frustrating conversations with both our compliance and legal colleagues around what we can and what we cannot say, and, you know, how far we can push this. And it seems at times that, so there's two things that play into this. One is obviously the regulatory context under which we operate, and the level of scrutiny and the level of permission that we may have in any single market around our messaging. And then there is our own appetite. I think we as an organization are probably a little bit more cautious and a little bit more risk averse than some of our competitors. At times it's a good thing, because when I look at some of what our competitors are doing, at times I might think that it's a little bit misleading potentially to the consumer. So we constantly and dynamically looking at this, and this is where really our online community is really coming into its own, because we can very quickly test different messaging before we put them into a live environment with our online community, and they almost kind of, you know, be part of, you know, the kitchen development with us, where we test things. The other thing that we do is we really look at this in context. Messaging is never taken out of context, or should never be taken out of context. So there may be things that are appropriate to say through a certain media channel at a certain moment in time that may not be appropriate at another time. And a little bit like, you know, Megan was talking about, what it made me think was, we need to be thinking about this in terms of a customer journey. What is the journey that an individual customer is going through before they buy, if you want, or transact in our case? And then, you know, how do we maintain, you know, that repeat? And I tend to think about this from an ecosystem point of view, and really identifying what is the right message to be serving up to someone at the right time, whether it's through an organic channel or a paid channel, and what is the outcome that we expect from that. And as long as we can do this respectfully, and as long as we can do this in a way that our customers give us permission to do, And we do that within the certain regulatory framework, at least from our point of view, it's quite a stringent framework. Then it becomes a little bit of a art and science, right? For all the data that we have, there is still an art element to this, in having this gut feel around how far is too far. And this is often the conversations that we have with our legal team and our compliance team, which is, it's not an absolute. It's a question of what risk are we willing to take? Very often, not just a regulatory risk, but also a reputational risk. What are we willing to take as a risk as an organization? And as I said, we as an organization tend to be a little bit more risk averse.
But as you pointed out there, it is indeed, I love that phrase, it is about the intersection between art and science. Often people associate the data-driven side, of course, with science, and then indeed the emotive connection that you can generate through one's art, and actually looking at your marketing as an artistic experience. Muriel, thank you very, very much for that answer. Before we move on, I'm going to lead to one more question coming from Tessa Lackey. This won't be the last question I read out, so if you have any more, please do send them through. But this is going to come to you, Megan, from Tessa, and she asks, what can you do to create more word of mouth content and more word of mouth recommendations? I'm imagining that customer reviews and indeed word of mouth recommendations were a fundamental part of your growth, as a new brand, and probably continue to still be. So how do you go about generating more word of mouth content and recommendations?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tessa, for that question. It's tricky, right? Like, I think every brand at some point wants to have a viral moment, and you can't create that, or you can't go into it thinking it's going to be a viral moment, I should say. When we were launching the brand, a lot of our efforts were focused into PR, I would say, and as well as lining with some media partners for native content. I think those are ways to show up authentically, then, coming from, rather than us shouting as Visible, shouting from the rooftops, we're the future of phone service. If it's showing up in ways where, and in places where your consumers already are. So finding the right media partners for native content, and working hard on the PR front as well. I think, from a Visible side, we're kind of shaking up the traditional wireless industry in the US. So we do have a different story to tell. I think PR, our partners in PR, were interested in helping to tell that story. And then, from the native content, it kind of goes back to understanding who your consumers are, what their interests are, and aligning with the right partners there. And beyond that, it's one other thing that Visible has been doing from the start is developing the product alongside our members. So tapping into our member base from a CRM perspective, also from a social perspective, to say, what can we do differently with this product? When we first launched back in May of last year, shortly after we launched, we asked our members, what else are you looking for in this product? And 59% of them said that they wanted mobile hotspot. And within about a month, we delivered that to them within the same price that they were paying on a monthly basis. So that, just how we develop the product as well, to show our authenticity and our investment into our members, is another way to just, increase how your customers are perceiving you, and how the way you're doing business with them, to help them, in their minds, promote to their network of friends.
And
if I can just add,
oh, yes,
sorry,
please.
Jack, I just wanted to add one quick thing on what Megan just said, which is storytelling is a huge part of this. But what I really love about the last example that Megan used is story doing. I think that the authenticity of a brand translates not just in what the brand says, but what it does, putting your money where your mouth is, and really demonstrating through your actions how you are embodying your brand identity and your brand purpose. And I think that last example of saying we asked our members what they wanted, and within 1 month we were able to give it to them as part of their inclusive package. I think that's a fantastic example of story doing that goes a very, very long way to earning the trust and stimulating recommendation and word of mouth.
Absolutely. As you say, yeah, generating that trust and generating a genuine desire on behalf of the user to recommend the product. If I think about the last recommendation that I made, I didn't do it because of any particular clever bit of messaging. I did it because the product really, really worked, and I wanted my friends, my family to leverage it as well because I care about them, etc. And that just comes down to, again, the importance of that feedback loop. But you also pointed there, to Megan, to the importance of really flagging that you are listening and that you are reacting in the conversations that are already happening, whether that's online or indeed in person as well. And what we're hearing more and more is the importance of the experiential piece and actually going to events, being where the real life conversations are happening, and integrating yourselves authentically, there's that word again, to those conversations. I'm going to move on the conversation here. I've got another question coming through, and it's actually related to one of the predetermined areas that we were going to look at during this conversation, and that is leveraging location as part of the personalization strategy. I'm going to come to you, Muriel, actually. In terms of kind of geo-targeting, geo-fencing, is that something that you are leveraging, and is it something that you're finding is effective?
Absolutely. So we are probably hugely privileged in so far that we have thousands and thousands and thousands of location points around the world. We don't own all of them. In the majority of them, we are actually a service within. But nevertheless, these are the kind of places where our customers come to interact with us. Now, obviously, they tend to be more biased towards our retail customers. And what we've really been working on over the last couple of years is the integration of retail and digital. In the past, I think we have tended to think of there's a retail world here and there's a digital world over there, and there's no intersection between the two, and they're fundamentally two different groups of customers. That is not the reality. In reality, we see a lot of our customers, and probably one of our biggest successes in the last couple of years has been a hybrid app. So let me try and explain this in very, very simple terms. You queue up your transaction on your app, on your Western Union app, and then you go to a physical location where you just hand in the money. So you pay effectively and for the money to be sent at the physical location, but everything else is on your app. And we are finding that actually both our digital customers sometimes have the cash in their pocket, so they like the experience on the app, they like the digital interaction and interface, they have more control, they input the information themselves, they can review it, and that information is then available for the next time they want to make a transaction. But they like the interface with a human being where they hand in the money. It may very well be simply because they've been paid in cash and they've got the cash in their pocket. So we are finding that the crossover, if you want, between the physical world and the digital world is becoming increasingly synergistic. And we are finding equally that we can geo-target our digital customers or our retail customers where they are in proximity to one of our stores to communicate an offer, to communicate a price promotion, to communicate a new product launch or a new features being released. So we are finding this blend and this kind of combination of retail and physical, what I call the brick and mortar, and this digital environment is increasingly becoming a rich source of engagement and interaction with our customers.
That was very, very clear, Muriel. In our interactions leading up to this webcast, one thing that became really, really clear is just that you know, dispelling this idea that, as you say, your online customer is a completely different person to your kind of in person and your brick and mortar customer. And I couldn't agree more. Megan, moving over to you, given the fact that my assumption indeed is that the vast majority of your customers would be online customers. Are you leveraging location as part of your personalization strategy also?
Yeah, so you know, Visible is built online. All of our interactions or our conversions are happening online or in the app. We don't have any physical stores, so I think, you know, it's a little bit different in terms of how we're leveraging location. So much of that goes again to understanding who our target audience is and where they are, and then how do we then show up in real life in those key markets. And you know, it's about understanding what their interests are. So you know, when I'm thinking about location-based marketing and developing some of our out-of-home campaigns and how we show up, it's going beyond just kind of the traditional, hey, Denver, you know, we know you love skiing and don't you love to get good cell phone reception on the mountains? It's going beyond some of the cliches that you think of when it comes to various markets and interest in those locations, and understanding more of what those micro communities are interested in, and tapping into what are interests of that community. So, you know, Denver, for example, is an emerging artist scene. And so we've partnered alongside different local artists to help bring to life some of what our out-of-home campaigns are looking like. And that's, for us, you know, how we're able to show up, and in that case, it's really about generating awareness for our brand.
But you are right, Denver does indeed love skiing. That's a very good point. But in actual fact, you're coming to the kind of one of the last questions that I'm going to ask, and I'm going to throw this back to you, Muriel, given the fact that, Megan, you touched upon this, you know, leveraging whether it's local or, you know, micro or larger style influencers to engage and communicate your message with your audience. Often, really over the last year or so, you know, influencer marketing has been seen to be at loggerheads with authenticity and actual fact. You know, we think about hashtag ad on Instagram, etc. What's your view on leveraging influencers in an authentic way, Muriel? And I suppose, how are you doing so?
So the pendulum kind of swings a little bit on this one. We have had several attempts, and we've kind of had different influencer strategies. I'm personally sometimes a little bit skeptical because of this authenticity issue. But we currently and we've moved away from very famous influencers who have a very large following to privilege people who are way closer to our brand. And in actual fact, one of our primary criteria is they have to have been customers of our brand before they were influencers, and before suddenly they were one of our brand ambassadors and representatives. So we put a lot of extra effort around understanding how our brand is a part of their life, so that they can talk about it in a way that's very personal and very genuine. But as I said, we are constantly relooking at this. We're constantly kind of challenging ourselves and saying, is this still the right thing to do? Has the kind of influencer bandwagon left the station and we need to be looking for something else? I think this is an open question that we are constantly revisiting and relooking at.
Fantastic. To wrap up, Megan, I'm going to throw a very easy question. What is next for when it comes to authentic marketing and actually driving an authentic engagement? And I suppose not necessarily what's next in terms of the broader industry, but what are you most looking forward to as we approach, tail end of 2019?
Oh, that's kind of a tough one in my
Just
mind.
an easy one there to end.
So, I think it's continuing to be at the root of who we are as Visible, and continue to tap into our member base to understand what's next for us to develop the product. We're all, Visible is all about removing the pain points of the traditional wireless industry and delivering a simple and transparent product to them. And so we like to leverage our member base as well as understanding our target audience to help us build a better product for them. So, we do have some things though in the works that I'm not at liberty to share, but they are all built upon under some learnings that we've gathered from our members. So that's kind of on the product side. On the marketing side, a lot of it goes to the same thing of just understanding how our members and target audience have responded to some of our partner integrations we've had, and some of our experiential activations that we've had, and taking those to the next level. So, it's developing content that is interesting to them based on how they've responded to it.
Fantastic. And I love how you've left the audience on tenterhooks, saying there is numerous things we're excited about, many of which I'm not at liberty to share. So teasing us just as we come to the end. Muriel and Megan, thank you so very much for all your insights. I'm going to pass back to Aaron, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the Brand Marketing Summit. And perhaps, Megan, by the time that summit rolls around, you will indeed be at liberty to share, and everyone will be excited to hear what it is. But Aaron, back to you. Might still be on mute. If the webinar software is not lying to me. So I'm going to fill that silence with a broader oversight of the Brand Marketing Summit and the Digital Summit. That is coming up in New York on October 21st and 22nd. As you can see, we of course have Muriel, who will be joining us there. So if you enjoyed some of the insights that she has been sharing, then please, of course, do find out a little bit more about that summit, and you'll be able to kind of meet her as well as a number of other speakers and brands in person. So yeah, more information can be found at insightgroup.com/east. And I don't know if Aaron has been able to unmute himself, but if not, thank you again to everyone who's been listening in. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. We had lots and lots of questions, so please do be sure to save those for the Insight Summit itself. And apart from that, everyone else have a lovely rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Jack and Aaron. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.